So welcome everyone. We have a very, very special Urban Devi today. Again, my name is Andrea for those that may not know me, and I'm really excited to introduce our dear Rukmini Prabhu. And even though a lot of us know her, I just want to take just a brief moment to introduce her because there may be others who will be watching this later on who don't know who our dear Rukmini Prabhu is, so we'll just briefly introduce her. So Rukmini Walker is an activist in women's spiritual empowerment and interfaith dialogue. She is the founder of the Urban Devi Collective, based out of the Bhakti Center in New York City and recently around the world through Zoom, where she is a member of the Board of Trustees at the Bhakti Center. Rukmini has been traversing the path of bhakti for most of her life, living in India, Canada, and the US as one of the first disciples of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who brought the path of bhakti to the West in 1965. Rukmini sees the world animated by spirit and practices an eco-bhakti, seeing truth and beauty in nature and in the world as kindred spirits. So thank you so much, everyone, and thank you so much, Rukmini Prabhu, for joining us today. And please go ahead and get started.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you all for being here. Good to see you all. Thank you. I'm going to begin with some prayers. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manabhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapadantikam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangolam Ghayate Girim Yat Kripastamaham Bande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Vanchakapatarubhyascha Kripasindhu Vayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sasyastu Visvasya Kalo Prasidatam Danyantu Bhutani Shivam Vitodiya Manascha Bhadram Bhajatadar Voksaje Avesatam no Matirapya Hoituki Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. And here's the English translation of one of the prayers that I just chanted for all of you. This is a prayer of Prahlad Maharaj from Srimad Bhagavatam. May the entire universe be blessed with peace and good hope. May everyone driven by envy and enmity become pacified and reconciled. May all living beings develop abiding concern for the welfare of others. May our own hearts and minds be filled with purity and serenity. And may all these blessings flow naturally from this supreme benediction. May our attention become spontaneously absorbed in the rapture of love unto the transcendent Lord. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you so much for being here, my friends. Yeah, so I wanted to begin by asking you if you could say a little prayer for, there's another Rukmini from South Africa, and she's a wonderful devotee, and she was supposed to present today, so I'm just subbing in for her because she ended up, she's in Vrindavan, and she ended up becoming quite ill. So her name is Rukmini, and if you could say a little special prayer for her today for her healing. Yeah, so thank you for being here once again. And let me just make sure I have all of you on, can see all of you. Wonder if I have this on the right thing. Show video grid, show thumbnail, show. Okay. So yeah, I wanted to start. So my topic is, what are you harvesting during this harvest season? And something happened last night here. I live in suburban Washington and worship in our temple in Potomac, Maryland. And something really beautiful happened here last night that is, to me, is on topic, and I wanted to share with all of you. So there was this young couple that they're from this area. They're from Washington and Baltimore, and then but they've been living in Houston. So young couple with a little, maybe a three-year-old son, and they had a new baby, and she was born and she was beautiful and everything was fine. But after 2 days, they started noticing that her stomach was bloating and something was wrong. So they went to the doctor, and the mother was actually having an intuition more than the doctor, which is something to note, I think, for all of us. The doctor was saying, well, maybe she'll be fine. But the mother was saying, well, I think maybe it's not fine. And so the doctor said, okay, well, why don't you make an appointment, go to the emergency room. So she went, and this story could be very long. I'll make it a little short. They found out she had to have immediate surgery or she would die that night, because she had they didn't discover right away that it was some kind of rare cancer, but her stool and the mucus and everything from her system was not coming out properly, and it was all going into her intestines. There was a hole in her intestinal tract. And so they ended up spending, oh my goodness, what a story. So the father told this whole story last night at the temple. He invited all his friends, different, like it was a real kind of a Thanksgiving, because it was multi-generational. It was all the people that they'd known growing up. So they actually spent 5 months in the hospital with this baby. And it ended up that her intestine was leaking. They had to have immediate surgery. They found out that she was one in the whole world with a very rare cancer that was kind of like in a horizontal way, like hugging the wall of her intestines. So even it wasn't even showing up on ultrasound. So anyway, the whole community, I guess the reason I'm mentioning this is the whole community zipped into action. And one wonderful Swami was every single day chanting japa with that baby on Zoom. And he arranged for them, the whole community, everyone was taking turns making meals for them. Her parents flew in from Baltimore, were there with the older son, and every day meals were being prepared for them and brought to their home. And this Swami, they were just being held in prayer. So so this last night was a celebration of her first birthday, and she is a miracle child, and she lived by the prayers and the thanksgiving of the whole community pulling together. So I wanted to share that with you. So yeah, that's the beginning. So yeah, here we are in this Thanksgiving season. So if you're not in the US, some of you may not be in the US. We have this holiday coming up next Thursday, and it's Thanksgiving. It's my favorite holiday. And it was started by our best American president in history, Abraham Lincoln. He had this idea that there should be, in the midst of war, the war was wrapping up, the Civil War, American Civil War, but he had this vision that there should be a Thanksgiving holiday. So to me, this idea of Thanksgiving, it evokes a deeper reflection in my heart. And this is what I propose to you. So my sister Susan, that I see her there with the blue, beautiful piece of art by her husband, George, on the back wall, she said something really wise. She said that there's something about this season, this time of year, that evokes a degree of reverence that's distinct to this time of year. Something about, the spring is over, the summer is over, now we're in the autumn season, and what are we harvesting? It's like a time of reverence and a reflection. So the history of this holiday, in case you're not aware of it, is that the first Thanksgiving in America was when the pilgrims, these are people, Europeans who came here seeking religious freedom. And by the charity of the indigenous people, they were able to live through the harsh Massachusetts winter. They didn't know how to eat, what to grow, what to harvest to survive that harsh winter, what to plant. So they survived with the help of these indigenous people. And so for me, I reflect back on what's the sad history of the lack of reciprocation that those indigenous people received. What did they receive in return for their gifts, their selfless gifts of teaching these unknown, strange people how to survive, right? What did they get? They received, their community received genocide and being ghettoed in reservations and abuse and really destruction of their whole way of life. And that continues today. And I think that this lack of reciprocation, that lack of gratitude, it's sort of collapsing in our culture. And I feel like it's so important that it be replaced. Like, all these big nations got together and finally got together and made a climate resolution in Egypt the other day, right? So finally. So I feel like it's time for us to replace that lack of gratitude, that lack of reciprocation that's destroying and collapsing our culture. I feel like it has to be replaced by what? By grassroots networks of friends and community circles and thriving in gratefulness. Yeah. So, in the spring, we plant seeds, and we're hopeful in the spring. We're planting seeds, and those seeds, the fruits of those seeds are what we harvest in the autumn. And to me, this is really a metaphor for our life in bhakti. Radhanath Swami says that in order for a seed to grow, it has to have soft and fertile ground. And gratitude is what makes our hearts soft. Gratitude fertilizes our hearts, and gratitude enables the seed of bhakti to grow. But on the other hand, this kind of mood of grasping or entitlement, when we expect or we think we deserve something, when we want something different from what we're getting from Krishna, that would be a symptom of being ungrateful. So I was reminded at the end of many chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam, there's something that's called the Shruti Phala, which means the fruit of hearing. What's the fruit or what's the result of hearing this particular pastime of Krishna? So yeah, what is the fruit or what's the fruit we're trying to harvest or trying to reap? Whatever we're grateful for encourages actually grace to become more accessible and descend into our hearts. Yeah. What do you think of that? I feel like when we're grateful, it gives access for grace to descend into our hearts. So maybe you all were celebrating, or many of you were celebrating this month of Kartik that we just passed. And we hear in that story of Damodar, the Damodar Leela, that by our own endeavors, we always come up 2 fingers too short, right? And that those 2 fingers represent what? Our endeavor is 1 finger, and Krishna's grace is the other finger. And that we have to try our best, and then Krishna will see our endeavor and he will help us. But this is a question, this brings me to a deeper question, I think. What is the impetus actually for me to try my best? Maybe just usually I don't feel like trying my best. Maybe I just don't have the energy or the inspiration or the reason why. So what is the impetus for me to try my best? So I really think the answer to that question is that the impetus is gratitude. That here's what I believe. I think gratitude is the pivot point, actually. The pivot point, really between matter and spirit, I would say. It's a pivot point to awakening aliveness in our bhakti. Otherwise, my chanting and my, everything I try to do, it can become so mechanical. I'm often just kind of sleepwalking through my life on automatic pilot. I do this, and now I do this, and now I do this, So I think that's a really, really, that's such a really important point, that what is the impetus for me to do my best? That impetus is gratefulness for everything I've received in my life, everything I'm receiving today, everything I couldn't possibly receive tomorrow and in the future, right? So another point is that, to me, the spirit of this Thanksgiving season is also to invite the strays. You know what I mean by strays? Those people who have no family nearby or have nowhere to go. Why should we do that? This is about my family, right? But why should we do that? To foster a sense of community and to let people know you are loved, that we're all part of one another, and that we're all interconnected as Krishna's beloved parts. And how often do we show and express our love, or and our interdependence on each other? So I think this holiday of Thanksgiving, to me, is a very important pause in our lives, in our year. It's a ritual, and we in America we tend to think, oh, rituals, empty, useless rituals, throw them away. But it's a pause. A ritual is a pause, an intentional pause to take an opportunity for that reflection. So let me think. Somebody has something new in the chat. Let me just see what it is. Everybody's gratefulness gives access to grace, from Andrea. Thank you, Andrea. So in my opinion, a conscious Thanksgiving, a lot of people celebrate Thanksgiving by the destruction of a lot of innocent birds, which is so unfortunate. Or maybe they've got the television on the whole day watching football, which is, fine, not to condemn. Everybody is in a different place. But I think a conscious Thanksgiving can create a shift in our consciousness. We gather the bounty of the harvest. We cook a feast. Often it's many hands together, different generations, It's the grandma and the grandkids and the moms and the dads and the neighbors. And it's such a beautiful thing. To me, it's kind of like an Amish barn raising. Everybody gets together and puts this thing together, family and friends, and we set the table. So if we think in terms of this gratitude metaphor, what is the harvest? What is the fruit? What is the feast that we will eat from the table we set in this season, right? We're setting a table, and what is the feast that we will eat in this season from the table we set in the regular days of our lives as we practice our bhakti, or attempt to practice our bhakti? So this delicious fruit, this abundant harvest, is what? It's a grateful heart. And I love that William Blake said that a grateful heart is heaven itself. It's one of my favorites. A grateful heart is heaven itself. Actually, I have a book where people have gratitude journals. I have a book, and I keep my favorite quotes about gratitude from different sources that I find in the world. So and in the Bible, in Proverbs, it said that someone with a grateful heart sits at a continuous feast. right? So maybe, oh, Thanksgiving, I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to see everybody I love the most. Everybody's going to come together, but then, oh, it's over. Everybody goes home. Everybody flies away. But if we're grateful, then a grateful heart sits at a continuous feast. Isn't that such a beautiful thing that I love so much? And then another thing is that when you think of Thanksgiving, maybe if you see an ad from a grocery store or maybe something, what's the symbol that we think of when we think of Thanksgiving? It's this symbol of cornucopia, this horn of plenty. And excuse me, it's a symbol of abundance. And picture that in your mind, like one end is really wide and big, and there's pumpkins and nuts and fruits and vegetables all pouring out of this cornucopia, this horn of plenty, right? But then on the other end of it is really small, and it's hidden, and it's a mystery, right? In the end of that horn of plenty, in that small end, there's so many unseen gifts, that treasures waiting to be revealed. I don't know what's coming tomorrow. I don't know what's going to be revealed in that mystery of horn of plenty. So yeah, I'm thinking, am I actually living in a mood of thankfulness in advance for the abundance, for the unseen small gifts that are on their way to me, that I receive in my life each day? Or am I really struggling with feelings of scarcity? Here's a good question for everybody. Let's be honest with ourselves. You don't have to call it out, but just for yourself. What's the first thing you think of when you wake up in the morning? And maybe what's the last thought you have at the end of the day, at night, just before you tuck in and go to sleep? So this is a question I think to ask ourselves. Do I wake up in a mood of scarcity? I didn't get enough sleep. I don't make enough money. My kids or my partner or my coworkers don't give me enough respect. There's not enough green space around here anymore. So yeah, can I try to make a shift and try to begin and end each day in more of a mood of grateful thanksgiving? Like, maybe put it in a journal, which is lovely. Or maybe just when I'm lying in bed, think of, by grace, I woke up again today and I have another breath of life. Many people did not, right? Or at the end of the day, what can I harvest from this day to be grateful for? Yeah. So I want to ask you to visualize. If you can just close your eyes and visualize. You don't have to close your eyes, but if you want, you can. A bubbling, gurgling fountain, a beautiful fountain. And if we visualize a fountain, it's not really complete unless it's overflowing, right? It's overflowing, it's gurgling, it's making a joyful noise. But if the bowl of that fountain keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, then that fountain, the water from the fountain, never overflows, right? And in the same way, if my wants and what I think my needs are keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger, then my heart can never overflow with this kind of gratefulness, right? It's like in the wintertime, we get concerned about influenza, right? But there's a more insidious disease, which is, I think, collapsing our hearts in this culture, which is the disease of affluenza. So yeah, think about that. So keeping my wants and needs to be on the small side allows my heart to overflow, the fountain of my heart to overflow in gratefulness. And I call it the satisfaction of sacred smallness. Or you might say the bigness of littleness. Yeah. And it reminds me of this beautiful Shaker hymn. Wonder if I should try singing this. I'll try. Okay. 'Tis a gift to be simple, 'Tis a gift to be free. 'Tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. There are many verses to that song, but I love that song, and it speaks to a previous, I think, culture of gratefulness. I mean, it wasn't always everyone in the past that was grateful, but perhaps there was more of a consciousness of thankfulness, you know. But at least I guess what I'm saying should be our mandate is we should try to evoke this for our now and our future. Otherwise, I feel like we're kind of doomed. Our culture's kind of doomed a little bit, you know. So yeah, so to me, this brings up an important question, and maybe you're already thinking of this question. Is it really possible to be grateful for everything that comes to me? We may not be grateful for everything, but if we go deeper in our introspection, we may access how to be grateful in everything. And this is a very deep point. I'm going to say it again. We may not be grateful for everything that comes to us, but if we go deeper in our introspection, we may access how to be grateful in everything. So what would that actually look like? Can I actually shift my worldview to go deep into this kind of more broad introspection, that that everything that comes to me comes as a guide, really from Krishna, from that supreme person who's within me, and yet so beyond me. So Krishna is both, you know, the dearmost, closest person right next to my own heart, and at the same time, he's beyond me as well. But he can help me, and those things that are coming to me that I may not appreciate, he can show me how to take my next steps, to be grateful in everything, if not for everything. Like, I'm looking at Andrea, she just had a painful surgery. So yeah, you know, can we be grateful for the surgery and the pain that came from the surgery? Or is there something in there that I can be grateful for? Can I slow down enough? Can I become more aware, more alive, to see that both my pain and my gratitude are like, they're like twins, they're like kindred souls. My pain and my gratitude are kindred souls. Why is that? Because they're both pointing to something. They're both pointing to what's temporary and what's eternal, and that everything comes to us by grace. That, yeah. And if I can stay rooted in a foundation of gratefulness in everything, if not for everything, then I feel like my sleepwalking life can transform into like a spiritual aliveness or a spiritual awakenedness. So how would that actually work? The way it works is that irritation, alienation, all that kind of negativity that we don't like when we see it in our own hearts, that alienation and gratitude can't sit in the same heart at the same time. So if our fountain, the fountain of our hearts, is overflowing, or we're trying to be conscious of what gifts are coming to me, even if I don't understand what might come tomorrow, then that fountain can be overflowing, and that alienation, that irritation, that agitation that I see overcoming me sometimes can't really take root in my heart. Yeah. there's a really beautiful meditation for this harvest season. And this is inspired by a Reverend Peter Reibel. And maybe for this part, maybe we can all close our eyes, because this is, I feel like, really beautiful and deep. He says, we build on foundations that we did not lay. We warm ourselves with fires we did not light. We sit in the shade of trees we did not plant. We drink from wells we did not dig. We profit from persons we did not know. This is as it should be. Together, we are more than any one person could be. Together, we can build across the generations. Together, we can renew our hope and faith in the life that is yet to unfold. Together, we can listen to the call for care and justice. We are ever bound in community. May it always be so. This is his beautiful prayer. So yeah, if you want to open your eyes. I feel like as individuals, we have the invitation to thrive in gratefulness. And I feel like community also thrives in gratefulness. That, you know, this is what we saw last night with this young family. It was really amazing. It was really a Thanksgiving feast, because, you know, here, this is a family that's struggled a lot, I would say. The young father lost his mother, I think maybe about a year, maybe a year and a half ago. His younger brother took his own life. It's a family that's had a lot of tragedy, but yet they were able to, really the father, you know, and the mother, they were able to just pull this whole community together in gratefulness in such a beautiful way. So yeah, I just thought there's one other thing that I really love. This is from, okay, so this is, I have a very dear friend. She's Jewish from Iran, and her first language is Farsi. And she translated this from the poet Rumi. So I really want to share this with you. I love this. He says, to me, this speaks about gratefulness. He says, "Oh, friend, which is better, sugar or the sugar maker? Is the beauty of the moon better, or that of the moon maker? Oh, gardens, are you better, or your orchards and flowers, or the maker of flowers and fragrant daffodils? Oh, wisdom, are you better in your knowledge and understanding, or the maker of 100 instant insights and perceptions? Oh, love, though you cause frenzy and turbulence, there is one who makes fire of the devotee's love. I have lost myself in that oneness of love. I have become a wanderer. At times he burns my feathers. At times he makes me new feathers. His love fills the sea of the heart and makes continuous or countless gems from particles of consciousness. And yet he crushes those gems and dissolves them in love, transforming such wondrous love into something else. He shines in my heart like the sun. He throws arrows externally and makes shields in essence in the heart." So I really love this poem. Something else I just was reminded of that I read from the poet Rumi, where he said, how did he put it? He said, can we let anxiety, so think of the anxiety you hold in your life, or I hold in my life. So he says, can anxiety become the portal or the gateway for a spiritual awakening? So I think this speaks back to my question, can we be grateful not for everything, but in everything? can my anxiety that I'm holding in my life, can that become like a doorway for me to go to a deeper place of things or people or situations, circumstances that maybe I'm not grateful for, but I could become grateful in. So yeah. So thank you all so much. And these are some thoughts on what are we harvesting during this harvest season. And I really wish you all a very grateful and transformative Thanksgiving holiday. And I gave some breakout questions to Andrea, and maybe we can break in.
Yes, thank you so much, Rukmini Prabhu. That
Haribol.
was so moving. And I don't know about anybody else, but I was also moved by how moved you were in sharing your stories of that family and sharing these beautiful quotes. And I wish we, Ipsita Deb was asking, can you tell us the name of the Rumi poem again so that we could try to find it, or is it?
You know, it was just translated by a friend of mine and it's not even published anywhere.
Oh, would you be able to maybe put it in the WhatsApp group afterwards?
Yeah, I will.
That would be great.
I'll do that.
Thank you so much for asking that, Ipsita, because I was also trying to find it and I couldn't find it. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
So we have some really beautiful breakout questions from Rukmini Prabhu for us to come together and share. I was just wondering if briefly, Rukmini Prabhu, since you mentioned about my surgery, if I could just briefly share.
Oh, please.
Because I feel like what you're speaking to is so to what I have been experiencing in this last week. So as Rukmini Prabhu shared, I just had a major surgery on November 9th, which was, wow, less than 2 weeks ago. And I shared with Rukmini Prabhu and some other dear Vaishnavis my realizations after that experience, that I had decided that I had asked my doctor if she would be able to play a kirtan during the surgery, because my main concern when she asked me, she was like, what are your questions? What are your concerns? I was like, can I put on headphones and listen to kirtans? I told her sacred sounds because she doesn't really know what kirtans or the holy name is. I said, as long as I'm hearing that, I'll be fine. And she was just so moved by that she decided to volunteer her phone, which is the phone that's accessible during the surgery, to play the kirtan for everybody that was going to be in the room. So myself, all the attendants, her, everybody. And I was really moved by that. And I was in such a state of gratitude that I was really inspired that day to be in a combination of gratitude and sacred sound. So while we were waiting for the operation, my mother was playing kirtans on the phone aloud. So like anybody that came into the room could hear the kirtans and the holy names. Yeah. And then I also was, everybody who came into the room, I made it a real point. And again, this is my example through our dear Rukmini Prabhu, was to thank them and to call them by name and to just really be grateful for whatever they were doing, even if it was something that was really painful, like, poking me and putting wires on me and, needles and things. I also kept doing japa the whole time and being grateful to Krishna while I was doing that, and just kind of preparing to accept whatever he wanted to happen with the surgery. Because with any surgery, they say you can leave your body. And I was like, okay, well, if that's to be, that's to be. And I was sharing with Rukmini Prabhu and others that what surprised me was that, as Rukmini Prabhu has shared before, when you're grateful, pride cannot grow in that type of soil. And what I found from that experience was that I was surprised that I was not afraid at any point. And what I realized from that is that when you're grateful, fear cannot grow. It's not there. And with our tradition, I realized too, is because Krishna's, you're really present with Krishna, right? And you're really seeing everybody who comes in contact with you as devotees, one way or the other. So it's so grateful. So I'm sorry to take up so much time, but I really felt inspired to share, because everything you were speaking to.
That was the best part. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So fear cannot live in a grateful heart.
No, it cannot. And so everything that you're speaking to really spoke to me and my life experience that I've just had. So we are going to break out into groups, dear Vaishnavis. It looks like we have about 17 of us, including Rukmini Prabhu and myself. I'm not going to be able to go into a group because it doesn't allow me to do that. So I think if we should be able to do maybe 3 groups of 4 each. I know some people may not be able to participate, so we'll just do 3 groups of 4 each in case some people can't do anything, so there isn't anybody left alone. And our breakout questions, which I'm going to put into the chat, but I'll also send again once everybody's in groups, are as follows. And I don't know, do you want me to read them, Rukmini Prabhu, or do you want to read them?
Why don't you read them?
Okay, so the first one is, can you describe a time when something happened to you or someone said something to you and it was the opposite of what you wanted or wanted to hear, and it turned out to be helpful or good for you? And then the second part of that is, what did you learn from that? And thirdly, did that experience change your perception of what's good or bad? And yeah, again, I'll be sending those again. Since we do have some extra time, we are going to be giving until 12 o'clock so that everybody since it'll be larger groups, gets a chance to share. So I'll bring everybody back at noon so we have a chance to reconvene. So I will be opening up the breakout rooms now, my dear friends. So please go ahead, and once you see the invitation, you can go ahead and join. Okay. Hare Krishna, dear Vaishnavis, welcome back. I hope you did not feel rushed. I was trying to not hit the close button until right at noon to give you as much time as possible. So right now is our time where we love to hear from everyone who feels comfortable sharing, like what you've discussed in your breakout sessions, what inspired you, what kind of stuck out for you. So you can either unmute or raise your hand if we have multiple people, and I'll call names. If we don't have any first volunteers, we can always call on our dear Rukmini Prabhu. Well, I think you're going to have to start, Rukmini Prabhu, because folks are feeling shy.
Okay, I can go first. Please don't be shy, because all of you are sacred and deeply wise, and we want to hear from each one of you. Yeah, but I have to say, the first reflection we had in our group was Ashley was appreciating so much what you said, Andrea, about intent, in that with so much intention going into a very difficult surgery with in a mood of taking shelter of Krishna's holy name, and at the same time gratitude and thanking everyone, asking their names, making them feel seen. Well, those people are so often unseen, right? People who are assisting in a hospital room or in an operation theater. So making them feel seen and thanking them for their contribution to your healing was so moving. And your realization that gratitude in the present. So we've been saying before that pride can't sit in a grateful heart, but now we have a new realization from Andrea that fear cannot live in a grateful heart. So how precious is that? I mean, that's the most precious treasure, right? What else? Please share something that came up for you, or something you wanted to share, or something that you got some light on today in this breakout.
I'm sorry, I was still muted. I was going to say BBT, who was with us in the main room, had a realization that they wanted to share in the chat. So if they wanted to share that again, just so that everybody who's here now can see it, that would be great. But does anybody else have something that they would like to share? Like I said, you can either raise a virtual hand or a real hand if you have your videos on, which we're so grateful for those of you who can do that. Oh, Ashley Prabhu. Oh, and Stephanie. Okay, let's do alphabetical order, Ashley Prabhu, and then we'll go to you, Stephanie Prabhu, okay?
And then
Ashley,
don't
please.
forget BBT.
Yeah, and BBT in the chat.
Oh, thank you so much, everyone. And yeah, we had such a lovely discussion. And I really loved what Sri Rupa shared about, after listening to all of our stories, she just said, the gratitude often doesn't come in the moment of the challenge, that it takes time. It takes time to kind of like harvest it. It's like the seed was planted in that moment, but the harvesting of the fruits of that really take time and they take attention. You have to be looking for what's being grown. That really struck me. And Rukmini then spoke to the idea of rest and how taking sort of that sacred pause and just giving yourself that grace and that space can also help you to harvest the gratitude from that experience.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you, Ashley.
Even the fact that we try to make time for chanting japa in our day is a pause, right, from the rush of, so that's a gratitude pause, or appreciating and thanking Krishna. Why do we chant, right? Why do we even do it? Yeah, please. Sorry, I was putting in.
No, thank you, Rukmini Prabhu. I always love the little bookends that you give with the shares, so it's so appreciated. Stephanie Prabhu, please go ahead.
Haribol, thanks everybody for being here and giving me an opportunity to join in on this community. The thing that came out of our group big time is how we tend to overcomplicate things, especially when we aren't in community. And sometimes those words that are spoken out of love, but might not be spoken in the way we are hoping for, we need to take that step back. We need to take that pause. And when we do take that pause, then we feel the truth behind it and the love that's behind it. And that's where we can grow and change. But I did have a couple of new people that are first time joiners, and I was very appreciative of having them join in and being able to share how much this has benefited me over the last 3 months that I've joined in. So,
Stephanie, what were some examples of stepping back from something that really could, in the moment, feel unappreciable?
So one of them was when one of the ladies would get a response from her advisor, PhD advisor, that things weren't, that things could have been better. And then she admitted that before she even hit the send button on the email, that she knew that it wasn't her best work. Still felt the pain and the jab of it being pointed out to her, and so having to take that pause and realize, okay, yeah, I do need to put my best foot forward, and I do need to put more effort in. So I really love that.
Thank you, so beautiful.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that, Stephanie. And thank you so much to, as Stephanie mentioned, those of you who are joining us for the first time. We're so grateful for you. And please feel free to type in the chat if that's the case, that this is your first time joining us for Urban Devi. We'd love to really welcome you personally. And as Stephanie had requested, and I'll put it into the chat again, we do have ways for you to connect outside of today's session. We have a Urban Devi WhatsApp discussion group where we can further discuss with each other topics that have come up during our talks. We also have an announcements only. So if you don't want to be in the more chatty room, you can just hear the announcements and know about upcoming Urban Devi, not only these monthly sessions, but we're actually going to be having a retreat. And I don't know if Rukmini Prabhu, if you were planning on talking about that.
Yes,
but,
yeah. I don't know if Ashley would be able to share the flyer, or maybe it's already been shared in the.
I have the information that I could put into the chat as well. Okay. But this would be a great way if you're really enjoying the virtual sanga of being with other Vaishnavis, other bhakti kind of ladies, then this is going to be a really great way to connect in person. We're having an Urban Devi retreat called The Gift of the Feminine Voice, and that's going to be on April 17th to the 24th of 2023, which is coming up sooner than you would think, right, everyone? It's going to be next year before we know it. And it's going to be in a beautiful retreat center in Costa Rica. So the details are available on the Bhakti Center website, which I put in the chat there. And we would love for some of you to join us. And oh, welcome, Brittany. So nice to have you here for the first time. Thank you for letting us know. We're so excited to have you. So we still have time for some more shares from
You know,
the breakout
Kamania
groups.
has her hand up, but it's disappearing in the beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, that's right, because your altar is the same color as the hand. I'm so sorry, Kamania. Please go ahead, Kamania Prabhu.
Beautiful altar. Wow.
This is Radha Muralidar's expansions.
Oh,
Krishna. Thank you so much. I've really missed attending these wonderful sanghas. Andrea, you're a really wonderfully natural MC. Thank you very, very much. It's a beautiful service. I had the pleasure of finally meeting Susan Prabhu after admiring her from a distance in my breakout room. Pranams to all of you from Switzerland. Apologies for coming late. I was attending an amazing webinar with Mahatma Prabhu about self-care and self-love. And I was just so fired up and inspired. I just jumped into this sangha right afterwards, and I'm so glad I did. I was sharing in our breakout group that I had a really empowering and magical opportunity to harvest the blessings of the devotees. I can't wait to speak to you privately, Andrea, because although my surgery was not major surgery, but I also very recently had surgery. And you were really speaking my heart with everything you said. It was exactly what I experienced. And the empowerment to experience and feel that came through the devotees, because I was saying in our breakout that I stepped way outside of my comfort zone, and I reached out to the devotees and I asked for their prayers. And I messaged them the day before and I told them, please pray for me. It'll be between this time and this time. Please pray to Radha Muralidhar, because they're my favorites. Please pray to them that I will be fearless. And that's all I asked for, because I figured, well, if I'm fearless, then everything is taken care of. And whatever happens, it doesn't matter. I'm fearless and surrendered. And it absolutely worked. I mean, I was blown away. Somehow I just didn't think about would it work or not. I just felt, Paramatma told me, ask the devotees for help. And finally I did, my mood has always been, oh, no, don't bother the devotees. They're busy. But I'm just so grateful that my first reaction was the discomfort of, well, really bother them, send out so many devotees? No. But no, I'm going to do it, because it must have been Super Soul telling me to do it. And it was such an incredibly empowering experience. I literally felt carried by the prayers and the loving wishes of the devotees. And I just want to encourage all of you, any difficulty you have, anytime you have any challenge in your life, just reach out to the devotees and ask them to pray for you, even if you're not comfortable to give them specifics, because it really works. I'd never done it before. I mean, I do it individually, especially when I meet seniors. I'm always very greedy, asking for their blessings, and I'm so shameless that I ask for their prayers, of all the prayers that they have, that, on their long list. But I'd never done it like this before, and it was incredibly empowering, and it really worked. I really was fearless, and I really felt so much gratitude for every person that came in the room, exactly like Andrea said. It like it felt like a little miracle in my life. I'm getting emotional now. And I was literally blissful. And you know what's funny? Shows you how naive I am. Just the way Krishna arranged everything, that's a whole other story. But it all happened quite spontaneously. It was a surgery that needed to happen. I'd been putting off, hoping I could avoid it, but it couldn't be. It had to happen. So I requested the next available appointment for surgery. And then it turned out, I found out when I came home, oh, solar eclipse. And in my naivety, because a lot of people think this very inauspicious, and I'm thinking, oh, how amazing. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was born during a solar eclipse. How auspicious. So I just went about my day.
wow.
I find out later
Wow.
But there were devotees here in our yatra in Switzerland who were in anxiety after they got my message, because it was exactly between 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. our time where the solar eclipse was going to be like at its maximum. And they were in such anxiety. And I wasn't at all, because I don't know, I'm just not superstitious like that. And it's anyway not in our philosophy to be. But I think it was also my ignorance. But I felt also Krishna's kindness, that, you know, I felt like he was also protecting the devotees from their anxiety, because, you know, I was very organized. I made like a little broadcast list of the devotees I wanted to update when I was in hospital, because I never had surgery in my adult life. I didn't know what to expect. So, so I sent them a little update to say, oh, my surgery has been delayed. And so there were devotees like, oh, Krishna, thank you for protecting her. Delayed her surgery. And I'm thinking, later I thought, oh, Krishna protected those devotees from their anxiety. And then 5 to 2, 5 minutes before the eclipse was due to be sort of out of the danger zone, the nurses come in and say, okay, we're ready now. And then I sent out another message to the broadcast list. Okay, they're taking me. And again, later the devotees told me, oh, I was so relieved when I got that message from you. And it was just such an incredible experience, but very, very blissful to be carried by the prayers and the best wishes and the loving concern, even the loving concern of the devotees. Yeah, I didn't want to put them in anxiety, but somehow I felt, I mean, I would never want to put anyone in anxiety, especially not devotees, but it maybe sounds weird, but somehow it was sort of very blissful. And I came out of the surgery also very blissful. You know, some days later, other realities start to set in, but still just, I just beg you, please, if you're in difficulties, just reach out to the Vaishnavas and ask them to pray for you. It's an amazing experience.
Thank you.
So
So
I'm
it's
sorry
really,
for taking so long.
it's really interesting to me that fearlessness, what I'm hearing is that fearlessness is a descending grace. That when we take shelter, that I'm not, you know, from the time we're little, we're told, be big and be strong and don't cry, and, you know, but to be vulnerable and to reach out for Krishna's mercy, that, and be vulnerable for his mercy, that comes as a descending grace.
Because it definitely was not from me, absolutely not anything from me. So through the mercy of the devotees, I definitely descended. So.
Beautiful. What else? What does this bring up for any of you? Any surgery or difficulty or fear or tragedy?
Rukmini Prabhu, since BBT didn't get a chance to put it into the chat again, let me just read what they wrote, because they put it in while everybody was in breakout groups, so nobody else could see it. So they said, I figured I'd at least try to respond here since I'm unable to join in transit. They said, though I cannot recall specific instances, it happens most often with my husband. And it's always what I needed to hear, not what I was expecting, wanting, or looking for. Sadly, these repeated instances have not been so anchored, and so in the unwanted programming has a stronghold. The change has not happened yet. Clearly, I still take shelter of my mind, thinking it's superior, though I know better. In the process, I'm sure, or perhaps I'm missing something. So maybe you could speak to that, Rukmini Prabhu, or if anybody else has something to share with that.
Anybody have thoughts on that? Sounds like she's reflecting back. So I think the wisdom is that pause, to not react, right? It's like, I just react. No, but to like choose my, what it said, that we are response able, right? That we don't have to just zoom a response, an automatic knee-jerk reaction, like, yeah, you're talking about, you know, something like that we say to our partners or something, you know.
Yeah, that really speaks to me as well.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have, I know that some of you joined late, so if anybody else has anything that they'd like to share who wasn't in a breakout room, feel free. I see that our dear Madhu Devi is here joining us. And I know that Dana came into the groups a little late. So if anybody else wants to share, feel free to raise your hand.
Maybe you can repeat what the break. Oh, Ipsita has a hand up. Yeah.
Yes, please, Ipsita Prabhu.
I just wanted to share a brief story that I heard at a retreat a few weeks ago. I'll keep it brief, but it's about it was a psychotherapist who is leading a spiritual retreat, and she was telling us about a clinical idea called post-materialism. And they recently had done a clinical study on this. So they took a hospital's archives and they had a set of control files and a set of experimental files. In the experimental files, it was patients that had been at the hospital recently and also from the past, and then the same in the control file. And the only difference is that the control file sat in the storage room, and then the experimental file, they asked nurses, doctors, and other care professionals in the hospital to read the file and pray for that patient. And it was statistically significant that after 3 months of prayer from the clinical workers, the people in the file were discharged more quickly and had healthier outcomes at the end of their stay in the hospital. Now, this is the really crazy part that really blew my mind, and actually, like, it gives me tears. So when they were pulling the files for this experiment, it wasn't people currently in the hospital. It was across time because they were pulling from the archive. That means that your prayers are beyond time and space. The effects of a shorter discharge period, a shorter period before discharge, and healthier outcomes was affecting patients in 1970. And like 2 years ago to like across time. So I'm not sure if I explained it well, but essentially the experiment was proving that prayer is beyond space and time, and it's working in statistically significant ways, to speak if modern scientific methods speak. But prayer is so powerful. And so to hear these wonderfully vulnerable stories from the beautiful Prabhus that have spoken today has really, and I've already been reflecting on this, it just really is really reminding me the power of intention and praying for the people we love and people we know. It really does have such an effect.
Wow, thank you. That was really precious. That was
Yeah.
amazing.
Thank you so much.
That's
Wow.
really good. You know, I have one practice. Maybe I'll show
Yes.
this little thing. When I hear a siren or an ambulance go by, I always take that as an opportunity to pause and take a deep breath and pray for that unknown person who is in difficulty or in the throes of something, the unknown. Or, you know, when you pass an accident or when you pass a roadkill, like I always pray for the soul of that departed creature. That, well, you could pray anything to bless that departed soul, but the one I like is, I always like to pray for that departed soul, that may you get the blessings of pure devotees in your next destination, in your next life. So I think, you know, maybe just keep an eye out for moments to pause, because we're so rush. I got to do this. And somebody's calling me and I need to do this and I have my list. But just look for those opportunities to pause, because I think those opportunities to pause are a gift from beyond, a gift from Krishna, you know, because this life is very temporary. And we're in bhakti, we're supposed to be trying to focus on what's real and use the temporary to access the eternal. You know, so use the temporary to access the eternal. That's an important principle, I think. Bhakti, you know. So and each of you has shared some beautiful examples of that. You know, I wanted to say Sri Rupa shared something beautiful also. If we have a couple minutes, right?
Yeah, we have about like 7 minutes before we have to do. Oh, well, actually, we have 2 minutes before closing us announcements. Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to share Sri Rupa. I hope you don't mind my mentioning your name, but it was very beautiful. She was in a professional meeting, and someone was in the plenary. It was a group of people, and they were explaining their vision of how they wanted everyone to. Sri Rupa, can you share it instead of me, because you'll do a better job? I might just mess it up.
We'll try. It's hard and I will try. So I was in a group, and we were all working on a project together, and the project leader wanted to invite in 2 people, and my position and the position of other group members was, let's just form a subcommittee because it would be easier to manage. And that it was better to bring the people into and also he changed my heart because he was right. So it wasn't, and his experiences gave him the power to be able to convince me of that. So he was changed by his experiences, and then he was able to change my feeling that we should have it's for the bigger vision of the group rather than my feelings of saying, well, it's easier to manage as a subcommittee. So yeah, that was.
Yeah, so you were able to honor his big picture vision and step back from your own perspective, which I think is so important and so rare, in our exchanges, right? We get so attached to, my opinion and what I think should be done here. What else? Anybody have anything else before we mention announcements?
I just wanted to reflect back from what Sri Rupa just shared, since I wasn't able to be in the breakout groups. What I really am hearing Sri Rupa sharing, and a lot of us are sharing, is that power of gratitude, but also compassion, and having compassion for ourselves and for others. And that compassion can show by asking others for prayers and for help when it's needed. And also just having the compassion to see others as people, like that radical personalism that our Rukmini Prabhu is always talking about. So being able to acknowledge that someone's had like things that were difficult happen to them, so we can see them in that light, so we can have that compassion. But again, like also remembering to reflect that back to ourselves. Right. So I just think it's so beautiful.
If I can share one other thing, Marilyn, do you mind if I mention your name? I just did. Sorry, but it was very, very deep because Marilyn is struggling with some illness, difficult illness, and she was just sharing how it's brought her family members together in a deeper way, that they're relating in a way that the small things are not mattering so much. And isn't that the authentic reality of where we want to be in our lives? So I thought that was very important also.
And Rukmini Prabhu, we actually have an anonymous question that has come in for you, just to kind of address. So this Vaishnavi says that they feel like their prayers and attempt at surrendering is just not working. They feel like they're all prayed out and thinking, is God even hearing me anymore? And they just don't know what to do anymore. They try to chant, but they feel like nothing is shifting. Do you have any advice for someone in that circumstance?
Yeah, just keep praying to go to that deep place, because maybe the answer is coming from a different direction. Sometimes, I'll tell a little story. Sachinandan Swami, do I have time for this? I'll try to make it brief. Well, Sachinandan Swami told this story about he went on, some devotee's father was a captain of a boat that went on a whale watch in Australia, and they were going to look for whales. And they went out in this boat, and the captain said, the captain who was back at the dock said, you're definitely going to see whales because there's whales out there today. And they went and they were looking for whales, looking, and they didn't see any whales. And they came back. He said, did you see them? And they said, no, we didn't see them. He said, they were out there. And they said, well, we were all looking. They were looking forward, but the whales were behind the boat. So that would be my thought, just an initial reflection that sometimes we're looking in a certain direction and we're not seeing the answer that's coming from another direction in which we are not looking. Maybe we're looking for a certain answer, but maybe the answer is a different answer than what we're looking for, coming from a different direction. So I think that is a very deep reflection that requires a lot of pause and a lot of time, and may not come, in the snap of a finger today or tomorrow. But I think with prayer and with pause, we can look in other directions and maybe turn over other rocks that we're not used to picking up and looking underneath. Sometimes there's something underneath, some unseen things that we're not used to taking a look for. Maybe the worms and maybe the brambles that we need. As in our group, we were talking about clearing away the brambles and the blocks before we can harvest, right? So if we're going to harvest something, we have to clear away the weeds and maybe the bugs we don't want to bring in our house. So looking in a different direction, taking time to clear away carefully and thoughtfully. And yeah, we hear that time is a healer, but time is Krishna, and time can be a healer when we put our intention there into healing. But time doesn't necessarily heal if we are not putting our intention toward that healing. So those would be my thoughts. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you so much, Rukmini Prabhu, for squeezing that question in. And it is 12:30 and we want to honor everybody's time. So do you want to go ahead and do the closing announcements? And I also just wanted to refer people to the chat where all the links are available for joining our different WhatsApp groups if you're not in them already, as well as how to partner with Rukmini Prabhu. She has a Patreon page with some other offerings that I definitely recommend, as well as the urbandevi.com and the Facebook group.
And
So
the
sorry.
Urban Devi retreat that Ashley, I hope you can post it
Yes.
in the Urban.
Yeah.
So yeah, the announcement that I'm supposed to make is that our next December, if you want to jot it down, our next Urban Devi gathering in December will be on December 11th, which is always on Sunday, but it's December 11th because we didn't want to bump into too close to the Christmas holidays. And we'll be hearing from Nandana, who is amazing, an amazing chef, an amazing deep scholar of Vaishnav literature. She lives in Gainesville, Florida, near Andrea. And I'm supposed to have the topic for her discussion, but because I wasn't planning to do this today, I don't have it. So it'll be a mystery. We'll have to look deep into the tip of the cornucopia, horn of plenty, to find out what her topic will be. But she's deeply wise and deeply learned. So I really, want to plant some seeds of hunger and thirst to come hear her on December 11th. To all of you, please join us. And thank you for being here. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. Good to see all of you.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. And again, putting into the chat the link for the Urban Devi retreat. We would love to be able to see some of you in person there if you can make it. So thank you again, White Vaishnavis. And on behalf of everyone, I know that we can say thank you so much, Rukmini Prabhu, for your wisdom and your heart and your love. And thank you, everyone who is joining us for the first and the second and the third time. And we hope to see you again very soon.
Thank you all
Haribo.
so much. Haribo, Susan and Ipsita and Marilyn and Stephanie and Brittany and Ashley and Manjulali and Madhu and Dana and Kumarangi and BBT.
Haribo.
Haribo.